Imagine standing by a massive tank of water, watching a giant creature glide beneath the surface. Its black and white body moves like a shadow, powerful and quiet. You feel a mix of awe and fear. That's what it was like for Elisa Hartley, a woman who loved orcas more than anything. She spent her life trying to understand them, to connect with them. But one day, in front of hundreds of people, that connection turned into something terrifying. This is the story of Elisa Hartley's final dive, a moment that changed everything. It's a story about trust, love, and the heartbreaking truth about keeping wild animals in cages. Stick with me, because this isn't just a story, it's a wake-up call. Elisa was different from most kids. While others played games or watched TV, she was at the beach, listening to the ocean. Even as a little girl, she'd sit by the water, mimicking the sounds of whales. She didn't just hear the waves, she felt them, like they were speaking to her. By the time she was 10, she could tell you where humpback whales traveled, or how an orca's call was different from a dolphin's. Her notebooks were filled with sketches of sea creatures, their names written carefully in her childish handwriting. The ocean wasn't just a place for her, it was home. As she grew up, Elisa's love for the sea only got stronger. At 16, she started volunteering at a small aquarium near her hometown. She'd scrub tanks, clean filters, and watch the animals for hours. She wasn't there to show off. She just wanted to learn. Why did some animals seem sad? Why did one orca swim in circles while another stayed still? Her questions made even the experts stop and think. She wasn't chasing fame or a paycheck. She was chasing answers. When Elisa went to college, she studied marine biology. She graduated with top grades, but it wasn't just her brain that made her special. It was her heart. Animals seemed to trust her. Seals would swim closer when she was near. Dolphins would chirp and splash like they were saying hello. It was like they knew she saw them as more than just animals. She saw them as friends. Right after college, Elisa got a job at Oyanis Park, a huge marine park where thousands of people came to watch orca shows. For most people, it would have been a dream job. For Elisa, it was more than that. It was her chance to be close to the animals she loved, to care for them, to help them. She wasn't there to make them do tricks. She wanted to understand their world. And at Oyanis Park, she met Moros, an orca who would change her life forever. Moros wasn't like the other orcas. He was huge, over 22 feet long and heavier than a school bus. His black and white body was covered in scars, like a map of his past. His dorsal fin, the tall fin on his back, leaned to one side, a sign of a life spent in a tank. Moros wasn't born in captivity. He was taken from the wild, pulled from his family off the coast of Greenland when he was just a young calf. The people who saw it said the ocean seemed to cry that day, with thunder booming and waves crashing. By the time Elisa met him, Moros had been at Oyanis Park for over 20 years. To the crowds, he was a star. He could leap high out of the water, splash the audience, and make kids laugh with his giant tail. But behind the scenes, the trainers knew a different Moros. He could be moody. Sometimes he'd float in one spot for hours, staring at nothing. Other times, he'd snap his jaws or slam his tail so hard the water shook. There were stories about him too, stories the park didn't like to talk about. Years ago, Moros had been involved in 2 incidents. One time, a trainer was hurt. Another time, a man who snuck into the park after hours was found dead on Moros's back. The park called them accidents and buried the reports. But Moros didn't forget. Elisa saw something in Moros that others missed. When she was near him, he seemed calmer. He'd follow her with his eyes, swim close when she signaled, and respond to her voice like he understood her. It wasn't about control. It was about trust. Elisa would say, "They don't speak like us, but they're always talking. You just have to listen." And she listened. She spent hours by his tank, watching him, learning his moods. She didn't see him as a performer. She saw him as Moros, a creature with a story, a past, a heart. But there was something else about Moros that worried people. Experts had been warning for years about orcas in captivity. In the wild, orcas swim hundreds of miles, dive deep, and live with their families for life. In tanks, they're trapped in small spaces, like goldfish in a bowl. It's not just their bodies that suffer, their minds do too. Some orcas start acting strange, swimming in circles or refusing to eat. Others get angry. Moros had shown signs of this. He'd ignore commands or snap his jaws in warning. But Elisa believed she could reach him. She believed their bond was stronger than the walls of his tank. June 17th started like any other day at Oyanis Park. The sun was bright, the stands were packed with families, and the air smelled like popcorn and sunscreen. Kids pressed their faces against the glass, waiting for the show. Backstage, Elisa was getting ready. She pulled on her wetsuit, checked her headset, and glanced at Moros. He was quieter than usual, floating near the surface, barely moving. She noticed he hadn't eaten much the night before. It wasn't the first time he'd acted this way, so she didn't worry too much. She trusted him. At 2 p.m. the show began. Elisa walked out onto the platform, smiling at the crowd. Moros swam beside her, his huge body cutting through the water. The music blared, and the audience cheered as he leaped and splashed. Everything seemed normal at first. Elisa's signals were smooth, and Moros followed them perfectly. He slid onto the platform, splashed the front row, and swam in tight circles. The kids loved it. But then, something changed. Moros missed a cue. He hesitated, his movements slow and heavy. When he slid onto the platform, his tail hit the water harder than usual, sending a loud crack through the tank. The other trainers noticed it. They looked at each other, uneasy. Elisa saw it too, but she stayed calm. She adjusted her signals, using gentle gestures to guide him. She'd handled his moods before. She trusted him to come back to her. Then came the moment everyone would remember. Elisa stood on a submerged platform, just inches above the water. She signaled Moros to swim beside her, a move they'd done hundreds of times. The crowd watched, holding their breath. For a second, everything was still. Then Moros moved, not where he was supposed to, but fast and wrong. His jaws opened, and in one quick motion, he grabbed Elisa's arm and pulled her into the water. The crowd gasped. Some thought it was part of the show, but the trainers knew better. Screams filled the air as the water churned. Moros dove deep, dragging Elisa with him. Emergency alarms blared. Trainers ran to the edge of the tank, shouting commands and throwing fish to distract him. They turned on underwater sounds meant to stop him, but Moros didn't listen. He thrashed and spun, holding Elisa tight. Her headset floated to the surface. One of her shoes came loose. The water turned cloudy with bubbles, and then with blood. For 7 long minutes, the nightmare continued. Trainers tried everything. They threw nets, blasted more sounds, and even tried to close off parts of the tank to trap Moros. But he was too strong, too fast. He moved like he knew exactly what he was doing. The crowd was frozen, some crying, others filming with shaky hands. A little boy asked his mom if Elisa was okay. She didn't answer. Finally, at 2:41 p.m., Moros let go. Elisa's body floated to the surface, still and broken. Medics pulled her out and tried to save her, pressing on her chest, breathing air into her lungs. But it was too late. The stadium went quiet. Families were led out, some in tears, others too shocked to speak. A father covered his daughter's eyes as they passed the pool. The show was over, but the silence was louder than any applause. Oyanis Park shut down for the day. Yellow tape went up around the stadium. The cheerful music stopped, and the signs advertising showtimes went dark. By evening, the park released a short statement. "We are heartbroken to confirm the loss of our beloved trainer, Elisa Hartley. Our thoughts are with her family and friends." They didn't say anything else. No one was allowed to ask questions. Behind closed doors, things were moving fast. Investigators showed up, pulling videos from every camera around the tank. They read old reports about Moros, including the ones the park had tried to hide. The truth started to come out. Elisa's body was examined, and the results were heartbreaking. She had broken bones, a crushed chest, and water in her lungs. She had fought to live, but Moros was too strong. The official report said she drowned, but the injuries told a story of a struggle no one could win. The news spread like fire. Headlines screamed about the killer whale and the tragedy at Oyanis. Clips of Elisa smiling and waving played on TV over and over. People on social media shared her story, using hashtags like #JusticeForElisa and #FreeMoros. Some blamed the park, saying they ignored Moros's warning signs. Others said it was just a terrible accident. But for the trainers who were there, the ones who saw Elisa disappear under the water, there was no easy answer. They just felt the weight of losing someone they loved. Moros was moved to a smaller tank, away from the public. He didn't perform anymore. Trainers barely went near him. He floated alone, silent, like he was waiting for something. Some said he was sad, missing Elisa. Others said he was dangerous, a wild animal who finally showed his true nature. The truth was probably somewhere in between. Oyanis Park changed after that day. They stopped letting trainers swim with orcas. They added new safety rules and brought in experts to retrain the staff. But many wondered why it took a tragedy to make those changes. For years, people had warned that keeping orcas in tanks was wrong. In the wild, orcas live in big families and swim for miles every day. In tanks, they're alone, bored, and stressed. It can make them act out, sometimes in ways no one expects. Moros had shown those signs, but the park kept him performing. Elisa saw them too, but she believed she could help him. She believed in their bond. Elisa's family didn't stay quiet. They started the Elisa Hartley Marine Trust to protect ocean animals and make sure trainers are safe. They didn't do it out of anger. They did it because Elisa loved the ocean and wanted to make it better. Her friends held a vigil by the tank, placing flowers in the water. They didn't talk about the attack. They talked about Elisa's smile, her kindness, how she never gave up on an animal, no matter how hard it was. Her story didn't end that day. It started something bigger. People began asking hard questions about marine parks. Protests grew louder. Laws started to change. Elisa's voice, the one that once called to Moros, was now heard in schools, in meetings, in the news. She had believed in understanding, in connection. And even after she was gone, she was still connecting people to the truth. This story isn't just about a terrible moment. It's about what happens when we love something so much we forget what it needs. Elisa loved Moros, but he was a wild animal in a world that wasn't his. Their bond was real, but it couldn't change the fact that he was trapped. When that truth broke through, it took Elisa with it. Her life wasn't lost for nothing, though. It's a reminder to listen, to question, to care, not just for the animals we love, but for the world they belong to. If this story touched you, if it made you think or feel something deep, don't let it fade away. Hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to our channel for more stories that matter. Elisa's story is one of love and loss, but it's also a call to do better. Let's keep her voice alive. Let's keep listening.